Oh no! I'm out of toilet paper. What am I going to do? Don't worry, Commander Bird. I'm here to help. Dogbert, you're here to help me? You brought some toilet paper? No, I brought something better. Marvel Strike Force Infographics. You'll never feel more clean than when you use Marvel Strike Force Infographics. Marvel Strike Force Infographics? I never tried them before. I guess I could give it a shot. Here you go. Wow, Dogbert, you're right. I feel so clean now. They really did a great job. There happens to be one I haven't seen before. Will you need this one back? Yeah, I don't think anybody will mind if it's used. I forgot to show it to him first. I think I better go do that right now. Thanks, Commander Bird. I'll see you later. Hello and welcome, everybody. I am Dogbert, and I have the plunger on my head. So you know what that means. It's time for another Dogbert's Teen Toilet Paper Infographic featuring the Rebirth team today. I know a lot of people have been asking for this, but I wanted to wait and make sure the team played the way I thought it would play before I start talking about them and my recommendations for T4s and for ISOs. So let's go ahead and start wiping. As we wipe in, we get Captain America, probably the most gear-heavy dependent character because this is the tank of the team. He's going to be taking a lot of damage, and because of this, this is why I'm going to be recommending an ISO of Fortifier. This will give him extra barrier to keep him alive longer, as he will be taking a ton of damage. Of course, you can also make the argument for healer on him as well. That is also another good ISO, but I am personally going to be running Fortifier. You can always bring him up to blue level ISO 3. You're not going to be bringing him to blue ISO 4 anyway, and switch between them as you feel needed, depending on your playstyle and how you're doing. Maybe in lesser raids, he's fine as a healer. There's even an argument for skirmisher, but I really don't like that one at all for him. He's going to be the tank. He's going to be taking the damage. Fortifier is the way I'm going, just to give him a little bit more breathing room. As for his T-Force, his basic is a nice to have. It does give 50% more damage to the primary target, but his job is not to do damage, and it's only to a single target. He does apply offense down for 2 turns instead of 1 turn, which is always nice. But this one is not in no way even I recommend it. It's just nice to have. It's even borderline luxury, to be honest with you. Moving on to his special. This one is absolutely positively required. This special is the one that this gives ability energy to random allies. 1 to 3 of them at random. It clears all negative effects on himself. This will also he also taunts with this ability, but the other thing that T4 does in raids, it grants energy to 4 random rebirth allies. So he is the energy battery. This is giving out energy. You absolutely need it. It is absolutely required. His ultimate is also required, I think. The reason for this being not so much the extra damage or chaining through 3 additional targets, but the extra 30% speed bar fill. This will allow him to take another turn very quickly, possibly go back into that special, which is required to get more energy going out and keep the team going like that with the energy so that they can do a whole lot of special and ultimates, because this team has relatively short cooldowns, making that very much required. And finally, his passive is just a nice to have. If you're big into war, you would want this because it gives 20% more health for him when in war, offense or defense, and for Wave 1 Avenger allies as well. He also gets taunt for 2 turns when he drops below 50% or another ally on the Rebirth team drops below 50% health. It also gives him 10% block amount for self. If that was block chance, it would be a totally different story, but it's only block amount. Therefore, it's nice to have. Could probably have been a luxury as well. Moving on with our second character, we're wiping in with Captain Carter, Haley Atwell. And the ISO for her is healer. She is the healer of the team anyway. This will allow her to do a little bit more healing every time she takes a turn, which will be quite often, surprisingly, as I found out with her. Now, as far as her T4s go, the first one, the basic, is a luxury. You don't really use this very often. It's just going to give a little 40% more damage to secondary and the primary targets, which she doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Not made to. And the other thing is she applies 2 regeneration for 2 turns. She applies 2 generation for 1 turn normally. Like I said, you don't really use this very often. The extra regeneration is not that big of a deal. As for her special, it is a recommended. This is actually a high value. If a Rebirth ally should die, in or outside of raids, doesn't matter, she will revive him with 60% base health instead of 30% base health. But that's not the real reason why you want this T4 and why it's recommended. It's because of the 100% damage to a primary target. Right now, this team is hurting on damage, so something like this, and in a move that you're going to be using quite often, is quite nice to have, and you really want that. That's why it is recommended. And don't forget the special also in raids gives 3 deflect, 1 counter, and 1 death proof. As long as healing the Rebirth allies, that may be another reason why you're using this one, is to get some more healing. As for her ultimate, this is also recommended, though this does hit all targets on the board, so it doesn't matter how many are on it, she hits them all. If it's a full board, this is going to be a ton of damage extra, 100% damage to all targets. But that's not the real juicy part about this T4. You also get Safeguard for 2 turns instead of 1. That is quite valuable in these raids where you have characters that can clear off your buffs. Getting Safeguard to avoid that and having it for 2 turns and not having to worry about that in raids is quite nice. But you could run without this T4, although it's highly recommended you put this one into her. And finally, her passive is a nice to have. All it does is when a Rebirth character drops below 30% in raids the first time, they get healed for 30% of this character's max health. This would be very useful if your Captain America is frequently dropping too low. Maybe you don't have him built up enough. Maybe you don't have him geared up enough yet. This could actually help out with that. It won't do anything outside of raids. Again, this one is borderline luxury as well. But because of how much damage Captain America is taking, I can see that being useful. And if one of the other Rebirth characters happen to get this low as well, that could come in handy because there is times when Captain America might not be taunting and they could get targeted. And now we move on to the third member. And we all know what that means. That's right. We're moving on to Winter Soldier, who is the turd of the team. That's right, the turd of the team, the crappiest character on the team, the one you wish you could get rid of, but unfortunately the team doesn't work without him. And somebody must have something against this character, just like they have something against Scarlet Witch, that they just keep making him a piece of shit. And my God, does he have some crappy T4s. Let's take a look at Winter Soldier. Well, his ISO is Striker. He is 100% a Striker. If you look at his abilities, he's a single target, doing a lot of bleed damage, applying stuff like that, just hitting single targets. He is 100% a Striker. No ifs, ands, or buts. As for his T4s, if there was a category lower than crap, this one would get it. This is probably one of the worst T4s in the game, if not the worst. It is literally 5% piercing to a primary target. That's how bad this T4 is. It goes beyond crap. If I had another category, it would be in it. It's absolute shit. Nobody should be ever putting this T4 into Winter Soldier for any reason. You'd be better off flushing them down the toilet. Moving on. His special is nice to have. It is, I believe, 50% damage on all attacks. It does attack quite a few times. He does attack 4 times. And he always applies the bleed instead of having a 75% chance to apply the bleed. But like I said, this is a single target, which kind of knocks it down and keeps it away from a recommended. If it was multiple targets, it would go to recommended, but this is truly a nice to have if you have the T4s for him. And next up is Mechanical Arm, which I've definitely moved up on to recommend it. Now, what this T4 does, it gives you in raids, it applies the stun for 2 turns instead of 1. A 2-turn stun is quite valuable. And it also gives you an extra 80% damage to that primary target. Again, this is a single target hit. But 2 turns of stun of controlling that character is incredibly valuable. And last but not least, the passive. Another piece of crap, T4. Just solidifying his position as the turd of the team. What does it do? Well, it's 5% crit for Hydra allies, and it's 10% crit chance for Self and all Rebirth allies. A 10% crit chance is not that great at all. It would have to be significantly more to make us actually give a crap about this one. That's for sure. And moving on to U.S. Agent. His ISO is a skirmisher. He's pretty much going to be the one putting up the vulnerables for us before we get Agent Venom. As we'll be looking at him next, obviously, because he's the last one left. But he does a lot of things that he needs to apply. Debuffs, ability block, stun. So giving him more focus is always nice. Now, he does give focus to the rest of the team, don't forget, in that he gives 30% focus to his Rebirth allies and to himself, and then you get an additional 15% in raids as well, without the T4. Now, his basic is a luxury. Again, this is something you're going to be using every now and then. When you run out of energy, it gives him a deflect, 60% extra damage. He doesn't do a whole lot of damage in the first place, and an extra deflect, which is nice, but he doesn't get hit very often because Captain America's busy getting hit, not him. His special is recommended. This one's borderline required, but you can work without it. What this T4 does, it gives 60% to all targets because he's going to chain to a bonus target, and get them ability block as well. And what this does, it gives them, and also gives them ability block for 2 turns instead of 1. This is almost like having a stun for 2 turns with this ability block. Not quite though. And getting 2 turns out of it makes it very valuable and makes it into the recommended category. His ultimate is a luxury. It is simply 50% damage to the single target. It is piercing damage, so that's nice, but it is a luxury you can live without. And finally, his passive, absolutely required. Not only does it give 15% more focus to Self and Rebirth allies, the big thing here, though, is if he has 3 or more Rebirth allies in raids, or if a Rebirth ally block, whenever they block, he is giving an additional 5% speed bar to himself and all Rebirth allies, speeding them up significantly. Because like Captain America is going to be blocking a lot, those deflects, if they have it, which they can get from Captain Carter, if they happen to get hit, this is going to speed them up and keep them going. This is really making him a very important member of the team. Just because of his passive, he just needs to exist so that they can speed up and keep going. And finally, we go to the last character. That's Agent Venom. Now, this is the damage of the team. And if you look at his kit, you'll know he is 100% a raider. He has things that happen on crit, so that's why you want it. Oops, hit one too many there. His basic is recommended. This is going to be a very T4 heavy character as far as T4s you want to put in him. The reason why his basic is recommended, he has a little bit higher cooldown on his ultimate, so therefore you might be using the basic a little bit more. And this gives 60% damage to primary and secondary targets, as well as applying defense down for 2 turns to again increase damage. His special is a short cooldown, only 3. And this gives 50% piercing on all attacks. Well, the damn thing's going to be attacking 4 times in raids, because he's going to have 3 or more Rebirth allies. That actually happens outside of raids too, sorry. But he's going to be attacking 4 times with 50% piercing. That's 200% more piercing damage. And on top of this, he also flips effects, but it's 50% more damage. That's why it's recommended. So you want to think about that. Ultimate. Also recommended. Now this one does have the highest cooldown of them all, coming in at 7. This is where Captain America is going to be very important to have. However, this one is going to be a lot of damage because he gets 25% additional damage for each positive and negative effect on the primary target. So you can be taking the one that has the most green and red above their head, because you get 25% additional damage and he attacks everybody on the board for a whole lot of damage. He starts out with 250% piercing, 25% per each effect. If you know anything about Doctor Strange Heartless, he's essentially hitting that with his ultimate. And finally, last but not least, is his passive, absolutely required. What this does, it gives 5% crit damage per Rebirth ally. So there's going to be 4 other allies with him. That's 20% crit damage. In raids, he'll also give an additional gain an additional 15% damage for himself and 15% damage to the rest of the team. This is incredibly valuable, especially on a team that needs damage. He is the damage dealer. He's giving them more damage. You absolutely want that passive. If you're on a budget on T4s, because Agent Venom is going to be very T4 heavy, obviously the passive will be number 1, special will be number 2, basic will be number 3, and the ultimate will be number 4 since it has such a high cooldown. That's the only reason why I would put that one off last if you're looking to prioritize T4s on Agent Venom when we get him. But as always, if you're looking at the entire team for T4s, you want to get all those required out of the way, then move on to the recommended as you need to. So that about wraps it up for the Rebirth team. As always, the infographic will be available below and in my Discord. And until next time, everybody,